What up, people? It's the Dub Podcast on Ilive4Saturdays, the best college football channel on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at Ilive4Saturdays, 4 as in the number 4. And it's been a really, really weird year for us at Ilive4Saturdays. It's been a mixed bag of excitement, complacency, progress, and almost like we've hit a plateau. Last year, our videos got a decent amount of views, at least for us, for what we like. We got in that 40 range, 50 range. That was okay. We weren't mad at that. We did a few videos in the summer that we liked as well. And we thought we were on the rise. The Twitter account on the rise. We hit 800 followers this year. But unfortunately, we hit kind of a rookie wall. And we've just been very complacent, and our videos just have not done so well. So mix that in with just unfortunate circumstances that happen in terms of just not being able to watch as much college football as we wanted, and not being as knowledgeable of what's going on in the game. We have not been consistent with making our podcast because on top of hitting low views, we weren't watching as much football as we wanted to. So we, our Ilive4Saturdays did not really want to put out a product that was ignorant, I guess you would say. But I'm back. Ilive4Saturdays is back. And pretty much almost a season recap. Gonna be a long video. But Oregon is dead. Texas is dead. Notre Dame's dead. USC is kind of back, I think. We think. I mean, they looked dead at the beginning of the year against Alabama, even though Alabama is a monster. But they looked dead, at least in that second half. But now they're arguably a top 10 team in the country. I don't even know what's going on there. But essentially, college football needs Texas. They need Notre Dame. They need USC. And they really used Oregon as the new generation of college football fans because of their awesome uniforms and how their style of play was. Really attracted the young kids all over. And on top of them, they were winning. And I think, for whatever reason, this year, college football has kind of fallen off. I know I've heard Colin Cowherd say, hey, college football needs to stop with the first down. You get a first down and the clock stops. And I kind of agree with that. I actually kind of agree because when I've had the chance to watch as much college football as I wanted to, I was kind of pushed away from the games because there's so much stoppage and there were so many commercials and so many TV timeouts and other timeouts and instant replay. Watch this next replay. Did he get the first down or not? And I think it's kind of destroyed the product a little bit. I know I got in a Twitter beef. Not really in a Twitter beef, but just kind of an argument on the account. Forgot who, but essentially we were talking about how college football needs Notre Dame to grow as a sport and to be a strong or I wouldn't say company, I guess a strong TV show so that everyone can really enjoy college football. All the hardcore college football fans can enjoy college football to its fullest. The more money it has, the better it is for the sport, and the better it is for the viewer. But unfortunately, it looks like the money has kind of corrupted the game, and I'm a little concerned about it, to be honest. All this money being poured in, it's not going to stop. And I'm looking at college football to be almost like this regional type sport. And it always has been that. Well, at least for the last, 100 years. But now I think it's becoming almost like baseball. It was on the rise and getting to that national talk like Oregon, like I said. Notre Dame was back. Alabama was great. USC was starting to climb itself back up. And I thought it was really starting to push itself. I know, I'm from the Chicagoland area, and more people. I never heard so many people talk about college football. I think just 2 years ago, it was really starting to grow, and now I feel as if the game is really slowed down in its growth. And I think the money that was been pouring in because of commercials and all this other crap it kind of has polluted the game, and I'm honestly concerned. I don't know if there is a solution because, you look at baseball, they've been looking for a solution, but you have to work around the type of money that's coming in from commercials, and it's just not going to stop. If you can't, college football is not going to say, oh, you know what, to make the sport possibly grow, we're going to stop making money in certain areas. And I just don't see any sports company or any company at all really doing that unless you have someone that is really a strong risk taker in that. And that's just me knowing a little bit about how money-making businesses and TV works. But that is my view on that. So, really quick games. LSU versus Florida. One of the most boring things I've ever seen in my life. Classic SEC game. Quarterbacks suck. Offensive lines always need work. There's always an offensive lineman that, oh, this guy is a new kid that is in there, is not doing so well, and blah, 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 blah. Great defenses, strong stance, a great stance by Florida, and Florida is now once again into the SEC championship game. Jim McElwain, shout out to you, man. You have decent talent, and you're doing what you need to do. You're probably the most talented team, I think, or at least easily the top 2 most talented teams in the SEC East, and he's doing what he should be doing. He's getting it done. He's getting to the SEC championship. Now get ready for that ass whooping from the Crimson Tide. But regardless, good job, man. Also, Colorado, Washington State. Now that was a real freaking game. That was a real football game. If you saw that, there was some smash mouth football. There were some hard hits. There was beautiful throwing. There was beautiful play calling. There was great defense. Some good special teams plays here and there. Just 2 great football teams playing. Not some super defensive, can't throw the freaking ball 20 yards crap game that we saw in the SEC show. Florida and freaking LSU. Real football in Colorado, Washington State. Shout out to Colorado. Also punching their ticket to their conference championship game, the Pac-12 championship game, which is going to be against Washington or Washington State. So Washington State, that game really didn't matter for them. I don't think they had an outside chance of getting into a committee bowl or a NY6 bowl, but regardless, still have a chance to still be in the Pac-12 championship game. Other game, Western Michigan versus Buffalo, game of the week. Not the most exciting game, but Corey Davis, that young kid is a freaking baller. That dude can play. Western Michigan is a good football team. Not very talented, but a good, solid overall football team. I don't know how they'll fare in the NY6 bowl game if they get there, if they can beat out Boise State, if they can beat their next 2 opponents as well. Also, side note, Western Michigan, they don't have an easy route. They got to go out and play Toledo this week, and Toledo is actually more talented than Western Michigan. We can have a little bit of extra chaos on top of Ohio State, Michigan this week. We could have a little extra chaos out there in the NY6 non-Power 5 bid. Toledo has always been probably the most talented team in the MAC for, I'd say, the last 4-ish years. If you just look back at their recruiting rankings in the MAC, in their own conference, they've always been at the top, or number 1 usually. So Western Michigan's got to really watch out. This is going to be a really, really tough game for them. And then even after that, they got to go play Ohio, a good football program in the MAC, who's always been up there at the top. So Western Michigan does not have an easy road ahead of them to get to the NY6. PJ Fleck, I'm sure, is going to get them boys ready, though. So we'll see this Saturday how they respond. I think it'll be really interesting to see how they respond this week. So, my man, Charlie Strong, he got let go. Very sad. Very unfortunate. The narrative that's going on about him is that he is a great guy. and it kind of stops there. People don't really come out and say, well, he was a great guy, and he didn't deserve to get fired, or he's a great coach. And I just think people overreact a little too much. Now, I do believe at some point after 3 years at Texas, you got to start winning games, man. And I think I've always said, I know Don V's come out and said too as well, if you're not winning at least bare minimum 9 games a year at the University of Texas, there is something wrong in that program. And there is absolutely no excuse. There's no excuse to not be winning 9 games every single year. Now, I gave Charlie Strong a pass the first 2 years. It was a dumpster fire. They had the recruits, but just something's just not right. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know exactly what was wrong with it, and I still don't know what's wrong with it to this day. But there is still no excuse to be not winning 9 games every single year. Absolutely no excuse. So, unfortunately, my man Charlie Strong had to go. But, like I've said before, many times on Twitter and on YouTube, Charlie Strong was set up to fail from day one. From day one, the first day he stepped on to the University of Texas campus, he was put there to fail. Regardless how you look at it, doesn't matter whether race played an issue or not, whether how bad of a program it was or not, Charlie Strong was never going to succeed at the University of Texas. Yes, race played a part in Charlie Strong's fall. But also, I think some coaches get really, really hot off a team, and they'll be really, really great for 3 years. And then, boop, that's it. Up to a great program. You see it all the time. I think my favorite example is Brent Pease. He moved just offensive coordinator from Boise State. Little old Boise State. No media, no coverage, no talent, no expectations. Just pure, free, whatever he wanted. He was an offensive coordinator, free play calling, could call whatever he wanted, call the Statue of Liberty, even call Statue of Liberty play against Oklahoma. Had he not gotten that, no one would care. Nobody would have cared. But then he gets hired by Texas, gets swayed with a limo, him and his wife are taking his fancy dinner in Austin. Huge contract, goes to the University of Texas, and he blew. He was awful. And he's been bouncing around ever since. And I think a lot of these coaches that come from smaller programs or smaller jobs and then get quickly up into a program so quickly. It's University of Texas. Oh, let's sign this good guy, the hottest guy right now on the streets. Let's go get this dude, sign him up, give him all the millions, give him all this responsibility. And a lot of these guys aren't ready. Charlie Strong was not ready for this job. Louisville, good football program, great. But he was there for 4 years. That wasn't enough time to really say, yes, this is my established program. This isn't Chris Peterson moving from Boise State, who had built an incredible program for years and years, and then went to Washington. This is a guy who was a really great coordinator at the University of Florida. Got a quick job at Louisville. Again, good program. It ain't one of the big programs. It isn't an elite program. It isn't with huge media press. It's in a small town. And he had great success. Fantastic. Great for him. Incredible. Did great. But then right after that, you throw him right into the fire. Probably the most prestigious job in college football. The only ones that rival them are Notre Dame and USC. And he was supposed to succeed at that? He came from Louisville. On top of that, his defense came from the SEC. His style of defense, SEC type defense. SEC type defense is never, ever going to work in the Big 12. And the Big 12 gets ragged on all the time. Well, Big 12 for years. And they haven't been this very good these last 2 years. And I'll admit that. Big 12's just talent overall has not been great. Texas A&M and Missouri's killed them. But in the Big 12, you gotta play bend but don't break, looking for sacks and looking for turnovers. That's not what Charlie Strong does. That's not what SEC teams do. They're looking for 3 and outs. They're looking for stops. They're looking to stop the run. They want safeties that come up and hit. That's not how you play defense in the Big 12. That's not going to work. That's why even when Charlie Strong said, I'm going to start taking over play calling, I knew that was going to be a horrible idea because he's an SEC guy. He doesn't understand Big 12 defense. You got to play bend but don't break. You got to play a lot of zone coverage. You got to look for a ton of sacks and turnovers because the offenses are going to score. You will not stop these Big 12 quarterbacks. They're going to freaking score. You have to get big sacks to bring them up on 3rd and longs, and you got to get turnovers to get more possessions to your offense and less possessions to their offense. That's how you win in the Big 12. You don't go by, we have to stop. You got to hit that A gap and shut down this run game. No, that's not how the Big 12 works. He was never going to succeed. It worked at Louisville because the Big East ran the ball because it's in the North. And then he had an NFL quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. It was never going to work. Charlie Strong was never going to work at Texas. It was a bad hire. And at the time, I thought it was a great hire because I didn't look at it. It sometimes, hindsight is 20/20. And it definitely is for me right now. But Charlie Strong was never going to work. At the time, I thought it was a great hire. Looking back at it, step by step, this thing was never going to work. And again, the racial part plays a big part in it. Do not forget that. There's a lot of people in Texas that were very uncomfortable having a head coach that was black. I don't care what nobody says. That was definitely a part of it. At the end of the day, though, if Charlie was winning, he'd still be in Texas. Here's one thing, which I'm just sick of in college football, that I've been wanting to talk. I've been talking about a little bit for years, but one thing I cannot freaking stand is when fans go, well, that one team isn't very good because of that one game they had to that one team that isn't very good, or, they got beat by a lot by that one really good team. So that team, even though they're 10-2, they actually suck. And that team that's usually 10-2, it will sometimes be like the 9th ranked team. So when fans come out and say, yeah, that team sucks, but they're the 9th ranked team and everyone below them isn't very good, I just want to look at them and almost punch them in the face. Because what the hell do you not see the big picture? When I say this team is pretty good, I'm looking at the big picture. I'm not looking at these little ass details or this one game or this one scenario or this one player or that defense that they play or whatever the hell. I'm talking about big picture. So I said on Twitter that USC is gonna end up in the top 10 percentile, probably gonna end up in the top 10 rankings. So teams that beat USC or lost to USC, I think we're talking about Washington. Washington lost to USC, right? And people came out and said, well, USC is a terrible team because they got blown out by Alabama. And I said, okay, that's fine. Even though Alabama is a freaking monster. And I've been calling them and saying that they're my favorite to win last year and this year to win the national championship. But again, USC is bad because they got blown out by Alabama, is what people saying. And I'm saying, well, big picture-wise, they're going to end up in the top 10. I'm looking at their schedule. I'm looking at other people's schedule. Play Notre Dame next week. They'll go with 9-3. Louisville is probably going to stay where they are. Western Michigan, I don't think they'll be ranked above USC. And I think regardless of what happens, I don't think they're better than USC. Florida State, they got Florida. So Florida State and Florida are going to eliminate each other. So depending on what happens, you don't know. Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, they're all playing these weird Big Ten schedules. Wisconsin's in there. Oklahoma's got to play Oklahoma State. It's all freaking a mess. So I'm saying USC's got this easy win. They're going to end up in the top 10. And that's going to be not a bad mark on Washington. Well, not as bad of a mark on Washington. So I said, well, Washington lost to them, but it's okay. They still have a chance to go in the playoff. Hopefully you're still following me. They said, no, well, Washington is bad because they lost to a bad USC team because they got blown out by Alabama. But what I'm saying is, people, I guess my message is, just look at the freaking big picture and stop focusing on these little micro details. USC lost to a fantastic Alabama team that's going to go down as one of the greatest college football teams of all time. And it's going to be one of the greatest dynasties of all time. So, even if USC got blown out because they did, that means absolutely nothing. That doesn't mean the team that lost to them or beat them or whatever the hell, that they suck. We're talking big picture. People need to look at big picture. People overreact to micro details. It happens in politics, happens in life, happens in race talk, happens with your wife or your husband or whatever, your spouse. People love to look at micro details, and the most important thing is the macro. What is the big picture? And at the end of the day, if Washington wins out, because Ohio State and Michigan are going to play each other, they're both going to take 2 losses. Washington plays in the Pac-12 championship game. If they win out, they will be in the college football playoff. Don't care about no loss and these little micro details. It's 4 teams that get in. 2 of those teams in front of them are going to have a loss, and they will play in the championship in the Pac-12 championship game. And everyone below them is just not that freaking good. And if you look at Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, Washington, Wisconsin, Colorado, Penn State, Oklahoma, USC, they all got these weird bad loss, good loss, weird win, bad win, whatever type of thing. And if you say all of them are bad, then nobody's freaking good in this damn country, okay? There's good teams out here. Stop thinking about the micro, think macro. By the way, it's time to look at my rankings. Yes, the first official Ilive4Saturdays Rankings I have not done in the longest time since, I think, last year. These are the most detailed, the most important rankings, higher than the committees. And really quick, also, again, people overreacting with the micro. I'm telling you guys, stop overreacting with micro little things, issues. Worry about the macro. People love to panic about the committee. Oh my gosh, the committee. They're not doing it right. They're getting it wrong. The committee, they don't know what they're doing. It's week 7. They already got it wrong. No, man. It's week 7. It don't matter. It's week 8, week 9, week 10. You know what's the only ranking that matters? The ranking at the end of the year. By the way, side note, anyone who's ranked in the top 17 to 25, shut up and stop arguing. None of y'all matter. Who cares? I'm a Hokie fan and people want the Hokies in the top 25. I don't give a crap about being in the top 25. If we win out, we get into one of the bowl games, okay? In the NY6 bowl games, but we're not getting the national championship. That's the only way we're getting in there. Stop complaining about stupid things, little micro things. Worry about the macro. Again, worry about the final ranking. Where does your team end up? Where are these teams at the end of the year? Heather Dinich is out here complaining about Penn State isn't ranked above Ohio State or whatever. At the end of the day, they're going to get it right. Worry about the macro. Worry about the ranking at the end of the year. Not in the freaking right now. This don't matter. This is cool for discussion and seeing, where you guys think all these little things. But there's people that actually panic. Penn State fans out here panicking. Penn State? If you guys win out, you guys have a decent chance. So just win out. Worry about your games. Stop worrying about what the committee thinks. In week 2, nobody cares. Or, what about this? Here's a little note for you guys. Just go undefeated. How about that? How about just go undefeated in the Big Ten? Go undefeated in your non-conference. Win the Big Ten championship, Penn State. Heather Dinich. And we're going to have these little discussions about, well, the committee doesn't have this team at this point of the year. It's not even the end of the year. By the way, why not just win your freaking games so you don't have no arguments, you don't have to argue. Stop arguing. Regardless, the committee has gotten the 2 years in a row. Really well done. And they're going to be fine. And regardless, Alabama's going to win the freaking thing. Stop complaining about the little micro things. Think about the macro. Anyway, here are my rankings. So, the top 9 teams from Alabama to Penn State are the teams that I've considered and worthy enough to actually do research on for the college football playoff. The bottom 3 teams, Boise State, Western Michigan, South Florida, are the teams worthy enough to do research on for the NY6 Bowls. Let me also explain what all these numbers mean. So, SOS, strength of schedule. And strength of schedule is pretty inconsistent, to be honest. And I like strength of schedule. It's a number. I like to bring out as many numbers as possible because my theory on ranking teams is get out as many numbers as possible because numbers and stats, they tell a story. And that's always been my philosophy in sports. You bring out as many numbers and as many stats as possible, and they tell a story. You're never going to tell me stats don't matter. And people are so afraid of numbers because they don't want, and stats, because they don't want computers and numbers to determine who's a better player and make decisions for themselves. But my experience with college football, especially college football and any other sport, but especially college football, if you just look at the numbers and you put every number out there and you look at it objectively, you get what you see pretty much on television. What your eyeballs are telling you. It pretty much confirms what you're telling you. And sometimes can point out little things that maybe you didn't see. So that's why I love numbers. Eye test to me is the last resort that I take. NFL talent is the last resort. If there's a slight edge I need to give to somebody, then I'll do that, obviously. But for the most part, the numbers take over. And I love using strength of schedule. I love using A record, B record, C record, and I'll explain that in a bit. MOV is margin of victory. Opponent's record, that's self-explanatory. The records of, your opponents, combined record of all your opponents, and then obviously the record. And I know that's very obvious, but I think it's a little more important than people make it out to be. Because at the end of the day, if you have a loss, that's a minus to your resume. Regardless of what you say, if it's a good loss, if it was a bad loss, it's a minus to your resume, and it's something that needs to be looked at. Why did it happen? How did it happen? How big of it is it? Where did it come from? And if you look at all these numbers, like the A record. What's the A record? A record is simple. So back in the day, I used to do top percentiles, like 33 percentile, whatever. So now I just make it very simple, and I say A record is top 10 percentile, right? Like your grades, right? College, high school, whatever. That's how grades work. Top 10%, right? If you get a 90 or to 100 or 91 to 100, whatever it is, that's an A. You get an A, right? So top 10 percentile is A record. B record, yeah, you guessed it, pretty easy. Top 20%. And your C record is the top 30%. So where do I get those rankings from? Who are you playing? If you go to the top 30 percentile, the top 30 percentile is, I think, the 38th best team. Where do I go? I go to the Massey ratings. Yes. Probably the most accurate in terms of numbers of all these other crazy ass stuff. So this is where I get the truest possible ratings. So 1 through 38 is essentially what we're looking at. Alabama is clear and by far the number 1 team in the land. If you look at all these guys, have no loss. Top of their strength of schedule is 15th. Their opponent's record is 63-46. It's the second best among them all. I think it's arguably the best. I think Clemson is second behind them. But if you look at their numbers, hey, we don't have to be so concerned about the numbers. Oh my God, don't look at numbers. You got to use eye test. If you just look at the numbers, though, man, it tells you, look at the record in A. 1-0 in the top 10 percentile. 3-0 in the top 20. And then they have an extra little win in the top 30. So don't be afraid of the numbers, man. Just look into them. And their margin of victory is fantastic. 29 points. Awesome. The second ranked team in our rankings, the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's kind of a close one. We start getting into it. But I like their strength of schedule. Their worst loss is in the top 10 percentile, or their only loss is in the top 10 percentile. Their margin of victory is fantastic. Their opponent's record is strong. It's higher than Michigan. It's higher than Washington, Colorado, Louisville, and others. Also, their margin of victory is 30.8. I think that's the most important one of this all. It's the second highest, but it's their second highest in margin of victory, because Michigan has the highest. But Michigan's strength of schedule is 51, and their opponent's record is 63 and 59. So, and Michigan also has a loss in the top 30 percentile, which isn't horrible, but I rather take the loss in the top 10 percentile from Ohio State. So that's why Ohio State's number 2. Number 3 is the Clemson Tigers. Love their margin of victory. Strength of schedule strong. Got good wins. Opponent's record better than Michigan's. So I give them the slight edge. And then the next slight edge I give to is the University of Michigan at number 4. Their margin of victory is amazing. And they have 3 wins in the top 10 percentile. The only thing that's holding them back is that C record, the loss in the 1 percentile, or in the top 30 percentile, which isn't horrible. But it's there. And that's my top 4. My 2 outside looking in, Washington. Mainly because their worst loss is in the top 10 percentile. Louisville has a loss outside of the top 30 percentile. So that's a bad mark on them. I could not put Washington over them. Wisconsin, the only knock on Wisconsin would be is they have that extra loss, and Washington has a flawless record after that. They have 1 loss, they have 2 losses, both in the top 10 percentile, but also as well higher scoring margin, or a margin of victory from Washington. But Wisconsin's right there, man. Wisconsin is right there. They're really close, and they can still play a Big Ten championship game. I also like Penn State. Strong strength of schedule. A win in the top 10 percentile. That's over Washington. I just don't like their scoring margin, or their margin of victory. I think it's too weak for me. On top of them having, and Washington is out here blowing people out. On top of them having that extra little loss in the top 30 percentile. But they're right there. And then number 6 is Penn State. So Penn State fans, man, keep your heads up high. You guys are right there. You guys aren't far. If you look at these numbers objectively, you guys aren't far. You're above Louisville. You're above Colorado. Colorado, who's right there, but again, low margin of victory. But Penn State fans, man, keep your head up high. You guys have had a tough schedule. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 6 teams out of 11 games that you played are in the top 30 percentile. That's crazy. So Penn State, keep your heads up. Keep your heads up, man. Win this next game. Put yourself possibly in the Big Ten championship game. And then you win that Big Ten championship game. You don't know. You never know. You can put yourselves in that Final Four. Really quick, the non-Power 5s. Boise State, Western Michigan, South Florida. South Florida, underrated team. I know you're going to say Navy, but Navy, when you really look at their resume, I don't know. We're going to see. It's going to come down to those last weeks, but I'd like South Florida a little bit more. South Florida's had a decent strength of schedule. Don't like their scoring margin, but their strength of schedule is strong. Their opponent's record is better than Western Michigan and Boise, and they also got a win in the top 30 percentile. The only thing that's keeping up Boise right now is that Washington State win. Not a bad strength of schedule. Western Michigan with a horrible strength of schedule, but they are undefeated. Got 1 win in the top 30 percentile. That's what's holding them up, really. And a strong scoring margin, 23.8. So we're going to see as it comes to the wire. My rankings for them are number 1, Western Michigan, number 2, Boise, and number 3 for South Florida. So, you got any questions about my rankings and how I do them? Any other suggestions you want? More numbers I could throw out? More little things, more factors you could do? Comment in the comment section. Thumbs up this video. Like it. Subscribe. We'll be catching y'all out there in them Twitter streets. I'm going to be tweeting hard. It's going to be an awesome finish at the end of this college football season. I'm excited for the end of the regular season. I'm sad to see it go, but I'm excited for this finish. This thing is going to be awesome, man. Top games everywhere. Important games all across the country. I'm ready. I'm psyched. I'll see y'all. Peace.